And now we are moving on to another area. So already we discussed accounts and records. Let's complete that accounts and records fully. Accounts and records and e-way bill, page number 158. First we need to understand section 35. There are two sections here, section 35 and 36. Section 35 talks about what are the accounts and records to be maintained and where that accounts and records to be maintained. So first question is that who is required to maintain that accounts and records? So every registered person is required to maintain that accounts and records, every registered person, but there are two exceptions. If there is a warehouse keeper and a transporter, even though they are unregistered, they need to maintain this accounts and records. Please concentrate. First question number 1, who is required to maintain accounts and records? Every registered person is required to maintain accounts and records, and there are two cases. Even though they are not registered, they need to maintain accounts and records. That is, a transporter and a warehouse keeper. They need to obtain unique enrollment number and they need to maintain. You can see in the last page, every transporter or warehouse keeper, even though not registered, should obtain unique enrollment number and maintain necessary records. That is about who. Then next one we need to see where these accounts and records to be maintained. So these accounts and records to be maintained in principal place of business pertaining to all the place of business, whereas in every additional place of business we need to maintain accounts and records pertaining to the additional place of business. Say for example, within the state I have three different place of business. Say Chennai is my principal place of business and Madurai and Coimbatore is my additional place of business. So in Chennai I need to maintain accounts and records related to Chennai, Madurai and Coimbatore, whereas in Madurai I need to maintain accounts and records of only Madurai and Coimbatore only accounts and records of Coimbatore. So that is about where the accounts and records to be maintained. Then next one, so how the accounts and records are required to be maintained. Either the accounts and records can be maintained in physical form or it can be maintained in electronic form. If you are maintaining an electronic form, we need to maintain proper backup of accounts and records. That is a condition. And next, what are the accounts and records to be maintained? So that is this I formats. So these are the accounts and records to be maintained. Already we know I formats. I for inward supply, F foreign trade, O for outward supply, R RCM, M manufacture related, A advances received, paid and adjusted, T tax details, S stock of goods. But if there is a person who is opting for composition scheme, they are not required to maintain tax details and stock details, means it is just I forma. Then next one, as per section 35, the above records to be maintained by every registered person in principal place of business and records pertaining to additional place of business in each additional place of business. Then what is the period? What is the period for which accounts and records to be maintained? We need to maintain accounts and records for a period of 6 years from the due date of filing annual return for the relevant financial year. So the 72 months are 6 years from the due date of filing annual return. Suppose for a particular financial year we went for appeal, then in that case, so the appeal outcome will come. Appeal outcome plus 1 year we need to maintain accounts and records, because it so happened that we got the appeal decision but the department may go for appeal. So at that time the next appellate authority will ask for the records. At that time we will say no sir, accounts are not there. Then it is not practically no, they cannot pass the decision for that reason. So 1 year from the outcome of the appeal or the 6 years from the due date of annual return, whichever is later. Again another place where we are coming across the later provision. So 6 years from the due date of filing annual return or 1 year from the disposal of appeal proceedings, whichever is later. For this period we need to maintain accounts and records. That is with respect to this. Then next page you can see these are the additional accounts and records which is to be maintained by every person. So in all these cases I formats is common, but there are certain changes and certain additional records to be maintained. Just this one page you need to remember, so that any question you get you will be able to write. First you look into manufacturer. So being a manufacturer they need to maintain I formats, no doubt. Plus in addition to that, what is it we need to write? They need to maintain process accounts. Process accounts means in intermediate process costing you did na, those process accounts, plus they are also required to maintain records related to waste and byproducts. So process accounts and details of waste and byproducts. Being a trader, they need to maintain I formats, but manufacture related records are not required. And being a service provider, they need to maintain I formats, but manufacture related records not required, and other records details related to goods or services utilized in the outward supply. What is the use of it? For example, you take my business. In my business, I am engaged in sale of books, which is exempted, and sale of video lectures, which is taxable. Now in that case, for both video lectures as well as sale of books, I am giving books, means I need to procure the paper, so I am procuring the paper. How much of the paper is used in books for sale of books, how much of the paper procured is used in books which is under video lectures, I need to maintain this utilization ratio, because that much of the paper procured used in sale of books, I don't have to take ITC, I should not take ITC, whereas that much of the paper procured used in books which is used for video lectures, I need to take ITC. So that utilization ratio, even though I am a service provider, the purchases which is used in the services, the utilization ratio or utilization schedule I need to maintain, then only properly I will be able to take ITC. That's why they are required to maintain the details regarding goods or services utilized in outward supply. And if I am under composition scheme, I forma, this TS not required. Being an agent, I formats plus details of authorization received from each principal, that is contract copy with each principal, and statement of accounts. An account statement will be shared with the principal, that account statement. Then being a works contractor, I formats, but in that M will not come, because being a service provider, anyhow we saw that manufacture related records will not be there. Works contract is also service provider, so manufacture records not required. However, this works contractor need to maintain the records separately with respect to each works contract, and payment received with respect to each works contract, mainly for the purpose of contract costing. In contract costing, for the purpose of recognizing the profit, we need to take cost incurred till date divided by total estimated cost. That is one of the way of ascertaining the percentage completion. For that purpose, payment received with respect to each contract they need to maintain separately. Then being a registered transporter, I formats, and transporter means service provider, so manufacture records not required. In addition to the details of goods transported they need to maintain. And being a unregistered transporter, unregistered person is not required to maintain I formats, but being a transporter, even though unregistered, they need to maintain certain accounts and records. So logically you think that you are a tax officer. What details you expect from a transporter? First, you need to get the details about the consignor and consignee. What goods are being transported, in which vehicle it is being transported, what is the starting point, what is the ending point, and thereafter you need the vehicle number in which the goods are being transported, and midway, suppose if you are storing goods anywhere, so those details also you need to maintain. See there, description of the goods, consignor, consignee, vehicle, delivery address, and the storage address. Then being a registered warehouse keeper, so you need to maintain I formats, and being service provider, manufacture records not required. What if you are an unregistered warehouse keeper? So logically you think, being an officer, what details you expect from him? You expect from him, that is what goods are being stored, and when it has been deposited, when it has been cleared, during that if there is any loss, and whose goods you have deposited, these details. So description of the goods, value of the goods, details of depositor, date of deposit, date of disposal, and any goods lost or destroyed. These records only we need to maintain. So being an unregistered transporter or warehouse keeper. So that's it. In 2 pages we completed accounts and records. Next we are moving on to e-way bill. E-way bill. So every person who is causing movement of goods is required to generate the e-way bill in the portal, that is e-way bill portal, and they need to carry that along with the goods. And whenever the goods are intercepted by the proper officer under section 68, so this e-way bill should be produced. If there is any defective e-way bill, or if the goods are transported without proper e-way bill, the penalty will be payable under section 129, that is 200% of the tax if the owner come forward. If the owner does not come forward, 200% of the tax or 50% of the value, whichever is higher. So that is a connection to e-way bill. So it is to be generated before movement of goods. It is not applicable in case of exempted goods. So only for duty taxable goods we need to maintain, and for exempted goods we need to carry only bill of supply. If bill of supply is not carried, then again penalty will come, 2% of the value or 25,000, whichever is lower, not higher, whichever is lower. and if the owner is not coming forward, 5% of the value or 25,000, whichever is lower. Then it is not applicable if the value of the goods does not exceed 50,000. But there are two exceptions, that is in case of handicrafts and goods sent on job work. Even though the value does not exceed 50,000, e-way bill is mandatorily required, and while computing this 50,000, whether GST to be included or not to be included, definitely GST to be included. So this is an exception to section 15(2)(a). As per 15(2)(a), all taxes, duties and cess by whatever name called is excluded from the value, but in this case GST to be included while computing the value of the goods, including GST and excluding exempted supplies. However, in case of job work and handicrafts, it is required. And e-way bill will have two parts. Part A will contain the invoice details, like what goods are being transported, GST of supplier, recipient, and document number, etc. Whereas part B contains the vehicle details and the transport details. And validity of e-way bill. Once an e-way bill is generated, when is it called as e-way bill generated? If both part A and part B is updated in the e-way bill, then only it will be called as e-way bill generated. Once the e-way bill is generated, it will have a validity depending upon the distance that is being covered. Suppose if it is like 480 kilometers, and if it is other than over dimensional cargo or other than multimode transportation, then we need to see 1 day for every 200 kilometers are part thereof. 480 kilometers means first 200 kilometers 1 day, next 200 kilometers 1 day, and thereafter 80 kilometers it will be 1 day. So 3 days will be taken as the validity of the e-way bill. You can see here 1 day for every 200 kilometers are part thereof. If it is ODC, over dimensional cargo, where the tail of the cargo will be very big, or multi-mode transportation up to some distance by roadways, thereafter by waterways, and thereafter by railways, like that, multi-mode transportation where one leg of the journey is by ship, that is waterways, then usually it will take lot of time to travel. That's why it is 1 day for every 20 kilometers are part thereof. Always the validity will be counted from the midnight of the day in which it is generated. For example, today e-way bill is generated in the morning 4 o'clock. So then we need to count from the midnight of today. If it is generated afternoon 2 p.m, then also we need to count from midnight. If it is generated at 10 p.m, then also from midnight only we need to count. So which means e-way bill always expires by the midnight. So whenever the e-way bill expires, within 8 hours from its expiry, we can renew the e-way bill. So the validity of e-way bill may be extended within 8 hours from the time of its expiry, validity counted from the midnight of the day when the e-way bill is generated. Then there are some FAQs in this regard. When the e-way bill is not required, these are the cases where e-way bill is not required. Already we know one point where the value less than or equals to 50,000, that is including GST, but other than job work and handicrafts. Apart from that, there are some more cases. If you are transporting the goods by non-motorized vehicle, then e-way bill is not required, like horse cart, bullock cart, manual rickshaws, etc. E-way bill not required. And goods transported from customs port, that is whenever the goods are moving between the customs departments, like say for example port, airport, land customs station, inland container depot, container freight station, or customs warehouse, all these are under customs control. Due to that reason, e-way bill is not required. That is second point and third point. Fourth point, transit cargo transported to or from Nepal and Bhutan. So Nepal and Bhutan are landlocked countries and India is having a MOU with them. So any goods which are to be consumed in Nepal and Bhutan will be unloaded in India and it will be going to Nepal and Bhutan. So this is known as transit cargo that do not require e-way bill. Movement of goods is for Ministry of Defence. So Ministry of Defence goods also e-way bill not required, because if we know like what goods they are moving, like AK-47, RDX or gunpowder, we can stop that vehicle and we can loot the things from that. So but that is not possible. So movement of goods for Ministry of Defence, e-way bill is not required. Empty cargo containers are being transported, there is nothing inside. Why e-way bill is to be generated? The container is empty, there is nothing, but the container may be goods. That's the reason why they have given this point. Then container transporting goods to or from a place of business and a weighbridge for awaiment up to a distance of 20 kilometers accompanied by a delivery challan. First the lorry will go to the weighbridge to know the weight of the lorry. As there is no goods inside the lorry, e-way bill anyhow not required. Again the lorry will go back to the factory and we will load the goods into the lorry, and now the lorry will come to the weighbridge. Even though it is carrying the goods, if the weighbridge is within 20 kilometers, e-way bill not required. If the weighbridge is beyond 20 kilometers, definitely e-way bill is required. and goods being transported by rail where the consigner of the goods is the central government, state government or local authority. What is the difference between point number 5 and point number 8? Point number 5, Ministry of Defence, any mode e-way bill not required, whereas here it is government, but if it is transported by rail then e-way bill not required. Then goods specified as exempt from e-way bill in the respective state or union territory. So this e-way bill provisions, whatever we are learning is only interstate e-way bill provisions, means for intrastate e-way bill, so we have separate provisions, yes, so that will be given by the state GST, but whenever in exam you get intrastate movement also, you just apply interstate movement provisions only, whereas reality is that for intrastate we have separate provisions and sometimes the same copy paste is there, sometimes different provisions are there. For example, in Tamil Nadu the e-way bill limit is 1 lakh, not 50,000, so like that it will vary, got it? So we need to see the state specific provisions for the purpose of intrastate movement, like that some goods may be exempted, so where e-way bill is not required. Then apart from that, in CGST rules they have given certain goods, transport of certain specified goods, LPG for supply to household and non-domestic exempted category customers, so other than dealers of cylinders, like this red color cylinders, so transportation do not require e-way bill. And what about the blue color ones, that is commercial, that requires e-way bill. So red color cylinders transported by a dealer, whether e-way bill is required, yes, this is only for other than a dealer of cylinder. Kerosene oil sold under public distribution system, that is in ration shops. Then postal baggage, natural or cultured pearls, jewelry, goldsmith and silversmith wares that do not require e-way bill, because if you know which vehicle it is carrying, then it will become money heist season 6. So therefore that is not required, e-way bill not required in that case, because it is precious articles. But imitation jewelry is not precious and all, so even if they give free also we don't need. So other than imitation jewelry, for imitation jewelry, imitation is what? Covered jewels, covering they call, na, it is not gold and all. So don't go to many marriages and think that all the things they are wearing is gold and all, okay, all that glitters is not gold, okay. So other than imitation jewelry, and used personal and household effects. So like we are relocating our house from one place to another place, we will book a lorry and we will carry the entire furniture, fixtures etc. and all to another place. Whether that requires any e-way bill? No, that do not require e-way bill. These are some cases. Then next second point, whether e-way bill is required if the movement is not for supply. Yes, whether the movement is for supply or without supply, e-way bill is required till the time the goods are taxable goods. Then whether 50,000 limit is for taxable goods or exempted goods, only taxable goods. What if in a single invoice there is both taxable and exempted goods? Exclude the exempted goods, see only the taxable goods. And next, while computing invoice value, whether GST to be included or excluded, GST to be included. Who will generate the e-way bill? That person who is causing movement of goods, registered person who is causing movement of goods. If the supplier is registered and he is causing movement of goods, definitely the supplier will generate the e-way bill. And suppose if the supplier is unregistered and the recipient is registered, deemed that the recipient will be causing movement of goods, so recipient will generate. What if both supplier and recipient are unregistered? Then in that case the transporter will generate e-way bill. Alternatively, supplier or recipient can enroll as citizen of India and they can generate the e-way bill. That is about this. Then whether transporter is required to generate if supplier has not generated because the invoice value does not exceed 50,000. Say for example, I am giving the consignment, the value of the consignment is just 30,000 rupees, that's why I have not generated the e-way bill. And like me, there are 10 people who handed over the consignments to the transporter. All these consignments are transported in a single lorry by the transporter. Even though individual value of each consignment does not exceed 50,000, but the cumulative value of all these consignments exceeds 50,000, then the transporter for each consignment should generate a separate e-way bill, and merging all these consignments, a consolidated e-way bill should be generated. So that is this. Transporters who generate the e-way bill, so as e-way bill 1 or e-way bill 2, where all the consignments in the conveyance individually is less than or equals to 50,000 but in aggregate exceeds 50,000. Then there is something called as blocking of e-way bill. So when you are not filing the returns for consecutive 2 tax periods, which returns? Either GSTR1 or GSTR3B or CMP8. GSTR1 return of outward supply, GSTR3B consolidated return, or CMP8 a return to be filed by a person opting for composition scheme is not filed for 2 consecutive tax periods, then e-way bill cannot be generated. E-way bill generation facility is blocked only with respect to outward movement of goods by a registered person, which means if I am not filing returns for my outward supply only e-way bill cannot be generated, but for my inward supplies e-way bill can be generated. Only for outward movement there is a restriction, and that outward movement I cannot generate e-way bill, and any other person also cannot generate e-way bill for this outward movement. My recipient also cannot generate for me, transporter also cannot generate for me. However, e-way bill can be generated in respect of inward supplies of the said registered person. Then other points, in case of bill to ship to transactions, usually in bill to ship to transactions, I am making supply to a third person, but I am raising invoice to you. You are my billing address and the third person is the shipping address. You in turn will raise invoice to the shipping address. Now in that case there are 2 supplies, one between the supplier and the billing address, second between the billing address and the shipping address. Even though there are 2 supplies, but there is only one e-way bill that is required. Then next one, multi-vehicle updation is possible in e-way bill, means up to some distance we are traveling in one vehicle and there is a vehicle breakdown, and in that case another vehicle is carrying, so multi-vehicle updation is possible. And part B, that is it contains the vehicle details. What is the time limit within which the part B should be updated? Within 15 days from updation of part A, which means that part A is invoice details, we updated that, which means the transportation should commence within 15 days and then only the part B details can be updated. E-way bill should be accepted by the recipient within 72 hours from its generation or delivery of goods, whichever is earlier. By that time they should accept. If they are not accepting, it is deemed that they are the recipient and they have accepted it. Part B may be updated by supplier, recipient or transporter. So see this, documents required in case of movement of goods. Suppose if there is a movement of goods, if it is taxable goods, if it is covered under supply, tax invoice plus e-way bill. If it is without supply, delivery challan plus e-way bill. So whether it is supply or without supply, for taxable goods e-way bill is always required, whereas in case of exempted goods e-way bill is not required. If it is under supply, bill of supply; if it is without supply, the document name will be delivery challan. E-way bill can be cancelled within 24 hours of its generation. So that is, e-way bill is generated and therefore we don't want to transport the goods, so the invoice is cancelled. For example, you placed an order in Amazon, and when the order is packed and ready for shipment, so you will cancel the product. When you cancel the product, but e-way bill already generated, so in that case what they will do, they will cancel the e-way bill. But if it is within 24 hours of its generation, e-way bill can be cancelled within 24 hours of its generation if such conveyance is not verified by the proper officer. So these are the key points related to accounts and records and e-way bill.